Au début de notre cours en janvier, nous avons parlé des régions de France. Nous avons parlé de l'agriculture, de l'industrie et de l'histoire. At the beginning of our course in January, we talked about different regions of France. We talked about agriculture, industry, and history. And while there were some lovely photos, it's not as if by reading what you read in the first few pages of the textbook, you would instantly be able to tell me everything there is to know about France. Mais pour réviser, je propose de vous donner l'eau à la bouche. But to have a review, I propose to make your mouth water. De vous donner means literally to give you. L'eau à la bouche is what they say when they say a mouth that is watering, basically. We could listen to a Gainsbourg song about l'eau à la bouche. I know we listened to some Serge Gainsbourg before. He has one like that. Anyway, I will say it again in French one more time and move to the next slide. Mais pour réviser, je propose de vous donner l'eau à la bouche. Comme a dit Napoléon Bonaparte, une armée marche avec son estomac. Je vous propose donc une explication de quelques plats régionaux de la cuisine française classique. You've probably heard the phrase from Napoleon Bonaparte, the quote, an army travels on its stomach. Well, I am therefore helping you learn with this. I'm proposing for you an explanation of some regional dishes of classic French cuisine. In other words, not what you get in the most forward-looking restaurants today necessarily, but what is expected from each region culinarily. I turned off the camera because I realized the little square containing my face would block your view of some of the words that I was asking you to read and to understand. So I know you know I'm in existence, that this isn't my ghost. This is me speaking in my house in Algiers. And so we see this picture of a millefeuille. Île-de-France. Remember that Île-de-France is Paris and the immediate surrounding region. One word before I get started just reading to you. The pastry itself is called le millefeuille, which is strange because if I talk to someone about the word feuille, une feuille means a sheet, usually of paper. And if I want to say I have 1,000 sheets of paper, I would say j'ai 1000 feuilles. Regardez mes feuilles. But here it's le millefeuille, the pastry. It's an idiomatic construction, I suppose, related to the nature of the dessert. So, le millefeuille a été inventé à Paris par le pâtissier Marie-Antoine Carême pendant le 19e siècle, lors du Premier Empire, à l'époque où Paris connaît ses premiers grands restaurants. Le millefeuille consiste des couches de pâte feuilletée alternées avec des couches de crème anglaise avec du fondant en eau. Let me do a little translating. Île-de-France, you understand, is the region. The millefeuille pastry was invented in Paris by the pastry maker Marie-Antoine Carême. Marie is sometimes used as a man's name, like there was a famous, really not a guy like Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was for years the head of a political party, but he had the name Marie in his name. Marie-Antoine was a man. Marie-Antoine Carême invented this pastry during the 19th century, during the period of the First Empire, which is basically when Napoleon was in charge, and where Paris knew its first grand restaurants, the really, really fancy, wonderful restaurants. And then I say millefeuille the millefeuille pastry, I would say probably in English, millefeuille pastries consist of layers of puff pastry alternated with layers of custard called crème anglaise with a kind of fondant icing on the top. Again, the camera's off. Le Lyonnais. Plusieurs Français considèrent la cuisine de Lyon la meilleure cuisine de France. Les recettes de Lyon sont pourtant souvent très simples. Les pommes de terre à la lyonnaise sont des pommes de terre sautées en beurre avec des oignons finement hachés et des herbes. Si l'on dit qu'un plat est cuisiné à la lyonnaise, ceci veut dire qu'il est préparé avec des oignons. Translation: the Lyonnais region. Some French people consider the cuisine of Lyon to be the best French cuisine. The recipes of Lyon are nevertheless often very simple. Lyonnaise potatoes are potatoes sautéed in butter with finely chopped onions and herbs. And if one says that a dish is cooked à la lyonnaise, this means simply that there are onions in it. All right, before I go on to the French, allow me to explain that I have fixed a problem that I saw and mentioned in an earlier slide on the recording. I have put my face on the screen in a place which will not prohibit you by its presence from reading the full text I put in these slides. So onto the French. Alsace. La cuisine alsacienne est profondément influencée par la cuisine allemande en raison de sa proximité avec l'Allemagne et plusieurs invasions allemandes à travers l'histoire. La choucroute garnie est un plat comprenant un léger décapage de choux finement cuits avec une variété de coupes de viande et de vin blanc sec avec des baies de genièvre. Grâce à la variété des saucisses et des jambons utilisés pour la choucroute garnie, il n'y a pas de recette fixe pour ce plat traditionnel. Il est souvent servi avec des pommes de terre tournées, comme nous pouvons voir ici. All right, in English. Alsace, I think you understand. La cuisine alsacienne, Alsatian cuisine, is deeply influenced by German cuisine because it's very close to the German border, and the Germans have invaded multiple times throughout history. La choucroute garnie is probably not something you would just translate as sauerkraut. If I really want to say I'm doing an Alsatian sauerkraut, I could say that. But I might just say in English, la choucroute garnie is a dish that includes a lightly pickled cabbage that's been finely cut with a variety of cuts of meat and dry white wine with juniper berries. Thanks to the wide variety of sausages and hams and pork products used in a choucroute garnie, there really isn't a fixed traditional recipe. It's more like there's a method. You'll have some sauerkraut, you'll have these different kinds of meat, you'll add the juniper berries, you'll add the wine. And it is often served with turned potatoes. As you can see them in the picture. Do you see that there are basically to the north, to the south, to the east, and the west vaguely yellow things that don't look like any vegetable you've ever seen coming out of the ground. Well, those are turned potatoes. That is a very old-fashioned form of cooking. The way one turns a potato is one cuts off either end and one basically makes it like, not quite a globe, but curves it so that it almost feels like, I don't know, the spindle on top of a banister. It's usually never so precise as that, but that's the general shape, and it's a very traditional kind of French cooking. There was a time in French cooking that you didn't think you were in a fancy restaurant if your potatoes had not been carved up that way, if they had not been turned that way, as people said. And so a choucroute garni, which if you think about it is a rather humble dish in the way that it's constructed, would be served with turned potatoes as a way, frankly, to raise the price. La Bretagne. Plus raffiné que les pancakes américains et parfumé plus diversement que les galettes que l'on mange aux USA lors du petit déjeuner, les crêpes bretonnes deviennent une tradition internationale. Les Français les mangent sucrées, faites de la farine blanche, mais pour les crêpes salées, elles sont plus souvent fabriquées en France avec une farine de sarrasin. Brittany. Um, More refined than pancakes in the way that Americans make them, and flavored more diversely than the flapjacks or other pancake type foods that one eats in America at breakfast time. Crêpe from Brittany, Breton crepes, are becoming an international tradition. Um, French people tend to eat crepes made with white flour if they are sweet crepes. But for savory crepes, what you have literally there are salted crepes, les crêpes salées, but you would either refer to a dish as sweet or savory. It would be sucré ou salé. They are most often made in France with a buckwheat flour. Sarrasin is buckwheat. Provence, Alpes, Côte d'Azur. Une des soupes traditionnelles de cette région est la bouillabaisse. Il y a plusieurs variétés selon la ville ou le village, mais toutes recettes pour la bouillabaisse sont faites de plusieurs genres de poissons et de fruits de mer. Les petits croûtons flottants dans le bol ici portent la rouille, un appareil épicé qui met en relief les autres parfums de cette soupe. La photo à gauche montre la bouillabaisse de Marseille. Okay, translation. Provence, Alpes, Côte d'Azur are three distinct regions, but are often categorized the same. I even think our textbook does that. Or maybe they call the Alpes that are in the Côte d'Azur Alpes-Maritimes. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, one of the traditional soups of this region is the bouillabaisse. There are different kinds of bouillabaisse depending on which town or village you're talking about. But all kinds of bouillabaisse recipes are made of different kinds of fish and seafood. The little croutons, little toast points that you see floating in the bowl here are carrying something that I cannot translate because the only word that exists in cuisine is the French one, la rouille. It literally means the rust or the rusting, as it were. But it's not obvious. It's obviously not rust. It's an appareil in French cooking it's like a batter, but it's more like a spread in this case. They use it for all kinds of things, that word appareil. It's for batter, it's even for the equipment, and it's for dough, and it's also for une rouille. And it's a spicy spread that brings out, that emphasizes the other flavors in this soup. The photo on the left shows the bouillabaisse of Marseille. Gascogne. La Gascogne est connue pour ses mousquetaires et ses canards. Ce plat-ci s'appelle le confit de canard. En préparant le confit de canard à l'ancienne, le chef enrobe le canard avant de le cuisiner dans des épices en poudre. Ensuite, après un bon moment, il enlève cette poudre, il rôtit le canard à la température basse, bien lentement afin de rendre la graisse du canard pour en faire une gelée. Il y a beaucoup de plats à canard de cette région, y compris le foie gras. So Gascony. Gascony is toward the Atlantic coast in France, sort of central Atlantic coast. Gascony is known for its musketeers. They came from Gascony. So did Cyrano, who's a musketeer. For its musketeers and its ducks. This dish is called le confit de canard, the confit of duck. Again, I'm not translating because one doesn't. In preparing the confit de canard à l'ancienne, à l'ancienne means old style. So in the old-fashioned way, the chef covers the duck with covers the duck before cooking it in powdered spices. After letting it sit like that for a good long time, I believe sometimes more than a day, you'd have to consult a professional chef who does this. The chef will take off the powder and then he roast the duck at a low temperature very slowly in order to render the fat from the duck to make a gelée. Like, in other words, like a, not quite a jello, but like a jelly, we might say. There are lots of duck dishes from this region, including foie gras, another term I will not translate. Avez-vous faim maintenant? Are you hungry now? So I'm not torturing you anymore with food that is not available through your own kitchen or Postmates. Mais je vous donne un petit devoir avant le début du cours. I'm giving you a little homework before the beginning of class. Considérez ces deux questions. Consider these two questions. Quel est votre plat préféré de la cuisine française? What is your favorite dish from French cooking? Quelle région de la France vous intrigue le plus du point de vue gastronomique? Which French region intrigues you the most given its cuisine? Écrivez quelques phrases en réponse et venez au cours Zoom prêt à discuter vos choix. Please come to the Zoom class with your several sentences if you possibly can. Read them to us and then be ready to discuss. I think that there's obviously something to be said for all of this. I personally think I could eat something from every region in France. I could overeat something from every region in France. But we can have this conversation as a beginning point for our larger discussion of France related to the textbook. It seems a little less dry to me than just kind of saying turn to page 30, whatever. It makes a lot more sense for us to have this conversation in this manner. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this manner of instruction. I intend to do it with you weekly in one manner or another. Some of it will be really dry. Some of it will just be grammar and something sort of very nitty and gritty. I thought, though, for us to kind of put our toe back in the water, we shouldn't start with a complex grammatical lesson. We should begin with something that um, we all can relate to. I don't know if you're among the people who have been cooking more than before the pandemic. I can tell you that it's a delight for me to return to the kitchen for a season because I've always loved French cooking. The way I know what chefs do when I know something about French cooking was I was a translator at a French cooking school in Paris. I had a job there. I didn't make a ton of money. I made minimum wage, and I had all the food I could possibly eat and could also give really wonderful food to other people. Um, but it was a way for me to legally stay in France a couple more years, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about French cooking, including the revelation that I did not wish to be a professional chef. Pretty much not at gunpoint. But at my own house, I enjoy it. Anyway, I don't know if you've been cooking or not. Perhaps that is a topic we can discuss in French when we are on Zoom. In any case, I look forward to seeing you. Our class will be on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. for the Zoom class. I look forward to seeing you then. Bye bye.